Good evening. Sister Sanders was wanting to know where we're starting in our study tonight, and I'm just going to answer now. It's 44 something. We'll get there. I think it's verse 18 we'll be starting at in just a moment. Unfortunately, a couple of weeks ago, last time we had our study in Genesis, there were tornadoes blowing here and there and everywhere, and only a small handful of people were able to make it to the building that evening. Those of you that did make it, we read, in my opinion, the best section of the book of Genesis. And so unfortunately, most of you missed out because you were at home hunkered down, afraid of the storm. I'd rather die in the church building anywhere else. But anyway, that's for you to decide. Just kidding. That was just kidding. I wasn't. You couldn't get on the road. Okay. All right. Anyway. What? I will read some of it again because it's just too good not to. The question we were looking at a couple of weeks ago was Joseph messing with his brothers, toying with them, or was he testing them in many of the things that he did? You know, he had clearly the upper hand. He was not recognized by them when they came begging for food, as so many others were. And so when they came in his presence, they had no idea this is our brother that we betrayed, 20 some odd years ago. And now he's prime minister of Egypt, governor over this whole affair. And we're here prostrating ourselves before him, begging from him. They had no idea. He knew, of course, who he was. He spoke to them through an interpreter, so they would not be able to detect his speech. He no doubt was fixed up like an Egyptian. It had been time, considerable time, since they had last laid eyes on him. They certainly were not expecting to see him in that context. I've seen people that I know out of context and didn't recognize them because they weren't where I remembered them being, like at a church place or maybe at a school or some other. But when you see them out of context, you just walk right by them, don't realize who they are. And I suppose all of that factored into not recognizing their brother. But he, of course, put them to the test. He wanted to know about whether they were spies, accused them of spying initially, just to put them in a hot seat, threw them in jail for a few days to let them scare them, I suppose, and let them think about it, and decided to keep one of them behind, send the rest of them home until they were willing to return with their youngest brother, who they, of course, had to acknowledge they had because he directly asked them, "Do you have another brother?" And they said, "Yes." "And is your father still alive?" And they had to answer all that. He was interrogating them, but they had no idea who he was. So my question is, was he messing with them or was he testing them? And I suppose you could look at it from the standpoint of a sibling with this delicious opportunity to take and exact some kind of, not necessarily vengeance, but, I'm just going to have a good time with this while I can, and drag it out as long as I can. I probably would have done something like that. I'm just saying, if I were in that position, just because it would be too good to turn up. But I think when we look at it a little more critically, it could be Joseph was in fact testing them. He wanted to see how they would respond about their brother, their younger brother, what they would say about him, what their thoughts and feelings were about him and of their father. And probably was curious if they would blab, and they did, about what the supposed story was involving his demise or his fate, whatever that was. He hadn't had the opportunity to hear what they told father about being torn by wild beasts. He hadn't heard any of that. So I suppose all that's going on in his mind. But they come back the second time, as you know, having insisted to their father that they bring Benjamin. They were starving. They had no choice. And so Israel reluctantly allowed Benjamin to go with them. And when they returned, he put on a feast for them. That was, in a sense, messing with them and as well testing them. They were seated in order according to their age, chronological age. That had to have gotten their attention. How would anyone take 11 men and just automatically know who's the oldest and who's the youngest? I mean, everybody that knows me and my siblings thinks that I'm the youngest, and they naturally know that. Not funny, Lisa. You know what bothers me? People think Lisa's younger than me. You can mistake that. I mean, we all know how if you have multiple brothers and sisters, multiple brothers especially, or multiple sisters, who's the oldest? And how would he know that? They didn't seem to wonder. Of course, they weren't in a position to ask questions like that. But that was interesting. And then when Benjamin gets his portion, he gets 5 times as much as the rest of them. I believe that was a test. Are they going to turn on him? Are they going to show spite and envy toward him like Father did when treating me with a coat of many colors and showing me special favors? I mean, how are they going to respond to Benjamin? And I believe all of that leads to where we're going to begin our study tonight in verse 18. Because you remember after the second trip, Joseph told his steward to load their sacks with as much food as they could put in it and put their money back in the sacks. But then he also instructed to take his silver cup and put it in the sack of Benjamin, the youngest. And so they left, and they hadn't gone very far till Joseph said, okay, I want you to overtake them, and I want you to inspect every one of their sacks, have them pour it out and look through it. And when you discover the one with the silver cup, I want you to bring him back to me. Now, the question you could ask is, was he doing that merely because he wanted Benjamin restored to him? Period. Could be. Or was it all just part of a master plan from Joseph's standpoint? It could be that too. Yes, Tommy?
Probably gives him a reminder of what they did to him.
Yeah.
Take his brother and then he goes back to his father. And so they got to go through the holes and everything.
Yeah. This is part of his vengeance, yeah. You may exactly be right. They're forcing them to go home empty-handed without Benjamin, as their father feared. And they're going to have to explain it all over again. What are we going to say now? An animal got him, not us. That's a good point. Maybe in the back of his mind he was still thinking, if he's messing with them, that's a big mess right there they're going to be walking into. So that could be what's going on. Or it could be they wanted to see how they would respond. Well, even if that wasn't his intention, that's what he would quickly learn. That these men are different men now. They're not the men they were 22 years earlier, when they so mistreated him and sold him into slavery, particularly Judah, who clearly comes to the forefront, beginning at verse 18 of Genesis 44. So Judah came near to him. This is, of course, after they found the silver cup. Let me bring us up to speed here. They found the silver cup in Benjamin's sack. They arrested him, brought him back, and then they were not all under arrest, just Benjamin. But all of them voluntarily came back. That by itself, that one action by itself proved these men are not the men they were 22 years ago. If they were, they would have said, fine, you can have him, you liked him anyway. You can just keep him. But they didn't. They came back to defend their brother. That speaks well of them. And it was Judah who came near to him and said, O my Lord, please let your servant speak a word in my Lord's hearing, and do not let your anger burn against your servant, for you are even like Pharaoh. My Lord asked his servant, saying, have you a father or a brother? And we said to my Lord, we have a father, an old man, and a child of his old age who is young. His brother is dead. He alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him. And we said to my Lord, the lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. But you said to your servants, unless your youngest brother come down with you, you shall see my face no more. So it was, when we went up to your servant, my father, that we told him the words of my Lord. And our father said, go back and buy us a little food. But we said, we cannot go down if our youngest brother is with us. Then we will go down, for we may not see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Then your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons, and the one went out from me, and I said, surely he is torn to pieces. Incidentally, this is the first time Joseph is hearing what his father thought all those years. And I have not seen him since. But if you take this one also from me, and calamity befalls him, you shall bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave. Now therefore, when I come to your servant, my father, and the lad is not with us, since his life is bound up in the lad's life, it will happen, when he sees that the lad is not with us, that he will die. So your servants will bring down the gray hair of your servant, our father, with sorrow to the grave. For your servant became surety for the lad to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then I shall bear the blame before my father forever. Now therefore, please let your servant, he's referring to himself, remain instead of the lad as a slave to my Lord, and let the lad go up with his brothers. For how shall I go up to my father if the lad is not with me, lest perhaps I see the evil that would come upon my father? Joseph could not restrain himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried out, "Make everyone go out from me." So no one stood with him while Joseph made himself known to his brothers, and he wept aloud, and the Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh heard it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Does my father still live?" His brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed in his presence. Can you imagine? What in the world is going through their minds? They were speechless. Joseph said to his brothers, "Come near to me." So they came near. He said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But now do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years a famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. And God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth, and to save your lives by great deliverance. And so now it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near to me, you and your children's children, your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. There I will provide for you, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty, for there are still 5 years of famine. And behold, your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see that it is my mouth that speaks to you. So you shall tell my father of all my glory in Egypt and of all that you have seen, and you shall hurry and bring my father down here. Notice again, he said, your ears, or you're hearing me speak. He wasn't speaking through an interpreter anymore. He's speaking directly to them. They had no doubt that's who this is now. Then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. Moreover, he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. And after that, his brothers talked with him. He had to reassure him, it's okay. He kissed them, and then they could speak. They're just standing here. I want you to imagine. I mean, this is really dramatic scenery here. These men, grown men, are standing here with their mouths hanging open. And you remember the first time they came, Joseph remembered the dreams from his childhood. Don't you know they're remembering all those dreams the punk said when he was at home? And here we are, we've been prostrating ourselves before him repeatedly, begging him for his favor. I don't know, this is just rich to me. Anyway, now the report of it was heard in Pharaoh's house, verse 16, saying, Joseph's brothers have come. So it pleased Pharaoh and his servants well. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this, load your animals and depart. Go to the land of Canaan, bring your father and your households and come to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt. You will eat the fat of the land. Now you are commanded, do this. Take carts out of the land of Egypt for your little ones and your wives. Bring your father and come. Also do not be concerned about your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. The sons of Israel did so. Joseph gave them carts according to the command of Pharaoh, and he gave them provisions for the journey. He gave to all of them, to each man, changes of garments. But to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. And he said to his father these things, 10 donkeys loaded with the good things of Egypt, 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and food for his father for the journey. So he sent his brothers away, and they departed. And he said to them, see that you do not become troubled along the way. Does anyone have a different version here, like English Standard Version? Quarrel. Yeah, don't quarrel along the way. Why do you suppose he's admonishing them that way? Yeah, he knew them, didn't he? He knew how they were. Y'all don't be fighting on the way home. What would they be fighting about? I can hear Simeon saying, I told you it was him. I told you. I don't know. What would these guys be arguing about? I don't know. But, I mean, this is rich. I mean, these guys are just, wow. He's like, look, y'all just go home, get daddy, and don't fight, okay? Then they went up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to Jacob their father, and they told him, saying, Joseph is still alive, and he is governor over all the land of Egypt. And Jacob's heart stood still, because he did not believe them. When they told him all the words which Joseph had said to them, when he saw the carts which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob their father revived. Israel said, It is enough. Joseph, my son, is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. I'm just rereading some of this. And I know there were a few of you in the class that were there that night. So I appreciate you bearing with all of us as we get caught up here. Isn't it amazing when these brothers came 22 years earlier, showed the coat of many colors they had dipped in animal blood? The first thing he said was, surely my son had been torn to pieces and he's dead. I mean, just like that. Negative news came to him and he immediately embraced it and was disturbed over it, mourned for 22 years over it. Now, wonderful, joyful news comes to him and he's like, I don't believe it. Why are we like that? Does anyone have any insight into why people are more willing to believe something bad than we are to believe something good? Yes, Tommy? That's true. Yeah. Yeah, that can't be happening. Of course, you have to think, too, for over 2 decades, he honestly believed that Joseph was dead. He'd never expected to see or hear from him again, and to find out that he's governor of Egypt. That's the kind of thing I think you would have to say is a little bit unbelievable. It'd be like saying Congress is going to go back to work and get things done for the American people. It's unbelievable. We know that's not going to be like saying Georgia is going to beat Florida this year and they're going to win the championship. That's not going to happen. We're going to lose to Florida or Tennessee or both. We can just know that. That's how we think. That's how I think, negatively. But I'm basing it on experience guided by common sense. But at the same time, you hope, right? But what if I were to hear that they beat everybody in their division? They went to I wouldn't believe it, would you? Yeah, they could be battling. That's true. Well, again, Jacob, he's like a lot of us, just can't accept good news. Verse 1 of chapter 46. Now we can start tonight. So Israel took his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. Then God spoke to Israel in the visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here I am. He said, I'm God, the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I'll make of you a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also surely bring you up again, and Joseph will put his hand on your eyes. There was a custom at that time when one died to put coins on the person's eyes when they were closed shut. That's a practice that continued even into the early part of this country. Now they put nickels on people's eyes when they died, and there was a common expression. He's sorry enough to steal a nickel off a dead man's eyes, or something like that, some kind of phrase. But that's one of those weird cultural things that started way back, and I think that's here a reference to that. In other words, you're going to see your son, and he's going to be the one to close your eyes and do the ceremony for your death, take care of your funeral arrangements, what he's saying. And so God speaks to him. And God says to him, I'm going to send you to Egypt, and I'm going to make of you a great nation there. Now let me ask you this question. All of this that we've been reading had been leading us to do this very thing. Every bit of it, even the famine. The famine was designed to do what is now being done. Why was God so interested in Israel leaving the land he's going to later send them back to? Why is he going to uproot them, carry them to Egypt, and then bring them back? And I want you to think about that, because there's some interesting thoughts. You say, well, but Egypt was a land full of idolatry, wasn't it? Yeah, they worshiped cats. They really did. Did you not know that? They also worship beetles and crocodiles. They worship just about everything. So they were an idolatrous people. And so if you're thinking, well, he's getting them out of one idolatrous community, he's just carrying them to another idolatrous community. Or is he? Because when God brought them to Egypt, what part of Egypt did he bring them to? Okay. And what was Goshen suited for? Pasturing. And what did the Egyptians think about people who pastured? It was an abomination to the Egyptians. So what's the likelihood they're going to be hobnobbing very much? Hanging out at the cafe and being Facebook buddies? I mean, it's probably not going to happen in Egypt. And in other words, they're going to have a little corner of the earth carved out for them to live in and dwell in and to grow into a mighty nation and eventually be greatly enriched by. And then come into the land of Canaan and inherit it. And in the process of coming back to the land of Canaan, be God's agents of wrath against an idolatrous, immoral, and ungodly people. And so when you think about what God's doing, he's not just doing one thing, he's doing several things. And it's amazing to me. When you look at it in that light, I mean, we shouldn't be amazed. I mean, God made the universe in 6 days. We shouldn't be amazed at anything that he does. But when you're able to stop and analyze why these little facts and details are here, and I'm not even pretending to tell you why I think this or that or the other, but I think it's fair to say God knew, obviously, what he was doing. This was not just haphazard stuff that's going on here. Now, you say God could have done it a different way. That's true, but I'm not God, nor are you, and God knew best what he was doing and how to do it. And so here he's allowed Joseph to become prime minister of Egypt, brought the famine in the land, and now Israel is moving to Egypt, where God is going to make of them a mighty nation. God had already predicted this to Abraham, that they would sojourn in the land of Egypt for 4 centuries, and that they would come out and again inherit that land that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob sojourned on. And so it eventually would become theirs. So Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob, their little ones, and their wives, and the carts which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. So they took their livestock and their goods, which they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and went to Egypt. Jacob and all his descendants with him, his sons and his sons' sons, his daughters and his sons' daughters, and all his descendants he brought with him to Egypt. Okay, hang on, y'all. These were the names of the children of Israel. Jacob and his sons who went to Egypt. Reuben was Jacob's firstborn. The sons of Reuben were Hanok, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. The sons of Simeon were Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman. See, already you're seeing a trend here, aren't you? Already they're marrying Canaanite women. The sons of Levi were Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. The sons of Judah were Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Zerah. But and Onan died in the land of Canaan. The sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamul. The sons of Issachar were Tola, Puvah, Job, and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun were Sered, Elon, and Jaleel. These were the sons of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob in Padan Aram, with his daughter Dinah. All the persons, his sons and his daughters, were 33. The sons of Gad were Saphion, Haggai, Shunai, Esbon, Eri, Arodah, and Areli. The sons of Asher were Jimnah, Eshua, Eshui, Beriah, and Sirah, their sister. And the sons of Beriah were Heber and Malchiel. These were the sons of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to Leah his daughter, and these she bore to Jacob 16 persons. The sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife, were Joseph and Benjamin, and to Joseph in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potphera, priest of On, bore to him. The sons of Benjamin were Bela, Bekar, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Ehi, Rosh, Mupim, Hupim, and Ard. Who's going to date them? These were the sons of Rachel who were born to Jacob, 14 persons in all. The sons of Dan was Hushim. The sons of Naphtali were Jaziel, Guni, Jezer, and Shilem. These were the sons of Bilhah, whom Laban gave to Rachel his daughter. She bore these to Jacob, 7 persons in all. All the persons who went with Jacob to Egypt, who came from his body, besides Jacob's sons' wives, were 66 persons in all. And the sons of Joseph who were born to him in Egypt were 2 persons. All the persons of the house of Jacob who went to Egypt were 70. It sounded like Christmas at my parents' house. Then he sent Judah before him to Joseph to point out, I'm glad y'all didn't name us like that. Then he sent Judah before him to Joseph to point out before him the way to Goshen. And they came to the land of Goshen, so Joseph made ready his chariot and went up to Goshen to meet his father Israel, and he presented himself to him, fell on his neck, and wept on his neck a good while. Can you imagine that embrace? Yes, Tommy? It's kind of like saying you can have the state of Montana. Y'all just go live there. Or probably more like give you the state of, I don't know, Tennessee. That's exactly right. To change an entire country in its direction. Here's something interesting. We just read right over it, verse 28. What did you notice about verse 28? Who's taking the lead? And what number son was he? He was number 4. And he's the one who made that moving, stirring speech that broke Joseph down and caused him to reveal himself. He's the one that offered to give himself instead of his brother Benjamin. And now he's the one that's assigned by his father to go before the family and make preparation. And we're going to see as we continue reading that when his prophetic pronouncement is placed upon him, something very profound will be stated about him that I believe indicates his character. And I want you to take note of the fact that we've already read a lot about Judah. And a lot of what we read about Judah before was not flattering at all. He was complicit with this business of taking Joseph and selling him into slavery, wanted to kill him. And he was also having relations with his daughter-in-law, thinking she was a prostitute, and then wanting to burn her alive when he thought she was pregnant outside of wedlock, when it was his job. So my point is, people can be horrible people. And they can change. And they can grow. And they can mature. We don't need to give up on people, especially our teenagers and young people. And I know we want to pull our hair out and want to kick and scream and feel like we're miserable failures. I think sometimes the best thing as parents and others that we can do in the lives of our young people is not panic, not overreact. Try to be slow and steady and calm and collected, not giving and compromising, but not be so overbearing. Young people have to work through their own issues. We all did, and our young people do. But people change, and people mature. And if we don't believe that, just study the life of Judah, and you'll see a man that became a leader among his brothers, a true prince of a man. But he didn't start out that way by any stretch of the imagination. So Joseph said to his brothers, Israel, verse 30, said to Joseph, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face, because you are still alive." He wouldn't die for another 17 years. But anyway, his point is well made. I'm at peace now. So Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, "I will go up and tell Pharaoh and say to him, my brothers and those of my father's house who are in the land of Canaan have come to me, and the men are shepherds, for their occupation has been to feed livestock. They have brought their flocks, their herds, and all they have. So it shall be when Pharaoh calls you and says, 'What is your occupation?' that you shall say, 'Your servant's occupation has been with livestock from our youth, even till now, both we and also our fathers, that you may dwell in the land of Goshen, for every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians.'" Joseph knew what he was doing. He knew the Egyptians. He knew how they felt. And I can't help but believe that he knew this was, if God hadn't already communicated it directly, he had to know probably on instinct, it would be best for my family to be, pretty much isolated from the rest of Egypt. Their own piece of land carved out for them, which was good farmland, by the way, livestock land. But this will be theirs. And since there are herdsmen, they won't be bothered in the usual way by the average Egyptian, so they're not going to be tainted by that Egyptian culture. They were to a certain extent, and that's clear when God gave the Ten Commandments, and in 30 days they're already making a golden calf. I mean, obviously some of that stuff did rub off on them, but God knew what he was doing. Had they stayed in Canaan, what likely would have happened to the people of Israel? They would have simply been soaked up by the inhabitants of the land. Culturally, ethnically, religiously, in every way, would have just become part of the inhabitants of Canaan and not fit for God's purpose. Anyway, any comments or questions on these chapters? Are y'all tired of this reading? Huh? Why are you looking at me that way? What? Chapter 47. Joseph went and told Pharaoh and said, "My father and my brothers, their flocks and their herds and all that they possess have come from the land of Canaan, and indeed they're in the land of Goshen." And he took 5 men from among his brothers and presented them to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to his brothers, "What is your occupation?" And they said to Pharaoh, "Your servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers." What was that noise? Did y'all hear a noise? Oh, it was a phone. I'm sorry. "We've come to dwell in the land because your servants have no pasture for their flocks, for the famine is severe in the land." I thought somebody rang the bell. That's what I'm thinking. I saw Tommy back there. Have no pasture for their flocks, for the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. Now therefore, please let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen. Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, saying, "Your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Have your father and brothers dwell in the best of the land. Let them dwell in the land of Goshen. And if you know any competent men among them, then make them chief herdmen over my livestock." Then Joseph brought in his father Jacob and set him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Huh? Now remember when Judah was talking to his brother, and didn't know he was talking to his brother, but when he was talking to his brother, he described his father as what in relationship to Joseph? Your servant. This is Pharaoh. And Jacob comes before Pharaoh, and what's he doing? He's blessing him. That's amazing, isn't it? And so, did Egypt prosper? We're about to find out. Yeah, they prospered very well because they were good to Israel. Israel was good to Egypt. But when another Pharaoh arose, things would change, and change radically. Yes, Tommy?
I just wondered if they had flock, and then when they went to the land of Goshen, and it was good for, fertile. I mean, I thought there was, a famine going on. Can they eat their cattle?
I don't think they meant under the present circumstances. I think that's typically where they would be fed. But there probably were streams and tributaries that kept it watered better than other places, I'm sure, too. I mean, the Nile didn't dry up, and there was plenty of their, I think, water source to probably keep some of their pasture land going. That is a good point. I'm thinking probably there was enough grain supply, and Pharaoh certainly would have made it available to them until They're not eating the animals? Well, yeah. Yeah, the Egyptians ate animals, too. They were hypocrites. They worshipped them and ate them, too. They did. People do that now. I'm just going to shut up. You know what I'm thinking. Don't get mad at me for my thoughts. I have a right to my thoughts. Okay, verse 11. Joseph situated his father and his brothers and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had commanded. Then Joseph provided his father, his brothers, and all his father's household with bread according to the number of their families. Now, before we get into the political thing, we're going to get there, but the Egyptians ate cattle, but they thought of herdsmen as an abomination. What does that tell you about Egyptians? They're hypocrites, yeah, but they were high society kind of people. They thought of themselves as too good for that kind of work. That's beneath them. So they had slaves and foreigners provide their food stuff for them. Is there anything wrong with herding flocks? Anything wrong with shepherding? Anything wrong with being a brick mason? a carpenter, a plumber, an electrician. Do we look down on those jobs? I don't think we would. There are some people, of course, in our culture that would look down on the blue-collar worker. But when you think about it, God has never disdained or looked down upon common, hard, everyday work. In fact, God has always praised it. When Jesus was raised in Nazareth, what was his father? And what was Jesus then? He worked with his hands. He wasn't too good to work and labor. Who did he hire to be his apostles? Well, among them were fishermen. Well, we understand that. Fishermen are the best, but hired fishermen. That's right, Scott. And that's what I was hoping to hear. We need to be careful in our culture that we no longer look down or continue to follow. And I think there's a trend today to look down upon common laborers. And I'm not going there, but I'm saying that a part of this illegal immigration debate that's taking place today is being fueled by that snobbery that a lot of people have. We're too good to pick cabbage. We're too good to pick tomato. We're too good, to do whatever. So we'll get a bunch of Mexicans to come up here. I mean, you talk about a terrible attitude. We should never see ourselves as too good to work and labor with our hands. There's no one that's too good to work and labor with his or her hands. Whenever you get to the point where you think you're too good, there's something wrong with your mind and your heart. It's certainly not good for a society to have such a low view of common laborers. It's never healthy. Okay, verse 13. Here's the question that I want you to ask. Joseph is governor / prime minister of Egypt. He's helping Pharaoh, but he's subservient to Pharaoh, is he not? And he's doing Pharaoh's bidding, is he not? Factor that into what we're about to read. At the same time, also ask, is what we're about to read just common practical application of a bad situation? Now there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very severe, so that the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the grain which they bought, and Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. So when the money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us bread, for why should we die in your presence? For the money has failed." Joseph said, "Give your livestock, and I will give you bread for your livestock if the money is gone." So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for the horses, the flocks, the cattle of the herds, and for the donkeys. Thus he fed them with bread in exchange for all their livestock that year. Who gets the livestock now? The government. When that year had ended, they came to him the next year and said to him, "We will not hide from my lord that our money is gone. My lord also has our herds of livestock. There is nothing left in the sight of my lord but our bodies and our lands. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants of Pharaoh. Give us seed that we may live and not die, that the land may not be desolate." Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. For every man of the Egyptians sold his field, because the famine was severe upon them. So the land became Pharaoh's. And as for the people, he moved them into the cities from one end of the borders of Egypt to the other end. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had rations allotted to them by Pharaoh, and they ate their ration which Pharaoh gave them. Therefore they did not sell their lands. Then Joseph said to the people, "Indeed, I have bought you and your land this day for Pharaoh. Look, here is seed for you, and you shall sow the land. It shall come to pass in the harvest that you shall give 1/5 to Pharaoh." That's 20%, right? 4/5 shall be your own seed as seed for the field and your food, and for your own food, for those of your households, and as food for your little ones. So they said, "You have saved our lives. Let us find favor in the sight of my Lord. We will be Pharaoh's servants." And Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt to this day, that Pharaoh should have 1/5, except for the land of the priests only, which did not become Pharaoh's. So it's a 20% tax. Wouldn't it be nice if our corporations only paid a 20% tax? I think the corporate tax rate now is, what, 36%? That's a lot. You think, man, they're paying 20%. That's a lot. They were glad to pay it. But notice what else you're hearing here. The land became Pharaoh. He owned everything. Have you ever not paid your property tax? Well, I'm not suggesting you not pay your property tax. But if you don't pay your property tax, guess what you're going to be reminded of? You're just squatting on that dirt. It ain't really yours. You think you bought it. You think you paid for it because you paid a large sum of money to be able to sit on it. But it really isn't yours. It belongs to who? The Carroll County, in my case, yeah. I don't pay my taxes. They're going to charge me, fine me, penalize me, and eventually, if I don't get it caught up, they're going to take it away from me because it's theirs. So is our situation any different? Oh, it was 1776. Yes, Tommy.
You know, when you say corporate pays the taxes, they don't pay that. It goes in.
Yeah, well, we pay it.
We all end up paying.
So the government can enrich itself, so the government can pass out. I know, don't start me on that. That's something I didn't want to do. Any other comments or questions about... by the way, if you read Josephus, he discusses this very section of Joseph's work as governor of Egypt, and he pretty much he exonerates Joseph, says he was only doing Pharaoh's bidding. That was Josephus's take on the matter, and that eventually Joseph gave back and sold back the land to the Egyptians. So anyway, verse 27, Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt in the country of Goshen, and they had possessions there and grew and multiplied exceedingly. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the length of Jacob's life was 147 years. When the time drew near that Israel must die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, Now, if I have found favor in your sight, please put your hand under my thigh and deal kindly and truly with me. Please do not bury me in Egypt, but let me lie with my fathers. You shall carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place. And he said, I will do as you have said. Then he said, Swear to me. And he swore to him. So Israel bowed himself on the head of the bed. Some of you probably have leaning on the end of his staff, or leaning upon his staff. It's a hard translation here in the Hebrew, but it probably means the bedpost on the bed of affliction where he was dying. So I'm going to go back in time a little bit, chapter 48. Any other question? Well, we're about out of time. I don't think I'm going to start chapter 48. Any other questions or comments about Joseph in Egypt, now Israel in Egypt? Yes? You know, I don't know. That's not clear here, is it? I would assume, but right now they're just the recipients of Pharaoh's favor. For how long that lasted, I don't know. Eventually, they would be outright slaves. So it's not going to last forever. They have to enjoy it while they can.
It does say, I just shut up, in 47, in 12, Joseph provided his father's brother and all his father's household with food.
Yeah.
According to the number of their dependents.
Yeah.
So if he's providing them with food, they're just like the priests. They wouldn't have.
That's what I'm assuming at this stage. Yeah, they're just his guest in essence. And almost like hired hands, because Pharaoh wanted them to take care of his livestock too.
How many years into the famine did Israel come from Jordan? 2 years?
It was 2 years had passed, yeah. There was 5 more years. He said that, Joseph did. There's 5 more years of famine left, so.
And then all the livestock would be all that people were selling to them. But then you said they'd go to the government. Yes, it takes care of the Israelites.
Well, here's the question I have. When the next Pharaoh comes along that did not know Joseph, how long was that time? Was it? I don't know. That's what we don't know. How long were they free and how long were they slaves? We know they sojourned there a little over 400 years, but...
Did the 400 years begin when they went down there, or did it begin when they...
Yeah, when they went down there, huh? Yes, time's ticking now, so they're going to be there for... That's a long time. 4 centuries is a long time. That's twice as long as we've been a country. So they were there quite a while.
Was it the next Pharaoh, or was there a couple Pharaohs yet?
It just says Pharaoh arose. It's kind of ambiguous, isn't it?
You would think that so long as Joseph, especially alive, then he was second command. Any new Pharaoh reigns while Joseph was still
Yeah, it's hard to study Egyptology is really crazy because liberalism has just completely infected that whole school of thought. And it's really hard to determine what dynasty was overlapping when and who was reigning when. And I mean, when I took archaeology, I thought, this is just insane. I mean, nobody can get their act together when it comes to who was Pharaoh when. I mean, you can have a lot of guesswork, but we're talking by the time Moses is born, 1500 BC. So if you want to back up 400 years, you know.
There's no actual truth, right?
Yeah. That's true, too. That's not necessarily true, too. Or maybe that's true for you. Yeah.
Remember a few months ago I told you I was going to have some surgery?
Yeah.
I was finally able to get it scheduled, so I'm going to have it tomorrow. So
Well, you haven't done that, bro.
it's a outpatient clinic up at Glenway.
Glenway.
Yeah, Tom's going to come out there and sit with Brenda.
Glenway, where's
It's
Glenway?
off of 289.
Is that near North Side?
Yeah, it's close there.
You take 400 exit?
No, yeah, I think you go there and when you exit off, but I can't remember exactly. I've been by. Anyway,
What time?
I got to be there at 12:45 and surgery at 2:40. I just want to ask for prayers.
I'll do that. See if I can't get up there tomorrow. Just
Brenda.
What's that?
Brenda. I'm trying to remember.
What's your name? 840, please, in your songbooks. Bremen begins their gospel meeting this coming Sunday with Roger Campbell, and their service time will be 7:30 Sunday night, and Monday through Thursday will be starting at 7 o'clock. So I want to make you aware of that. Also, don't forget our Bible Bowl is, she's not in here, Saturday week. Do we have money raised for food? We need money raised for food. If you could donate money to help with the Chick-fil-A sandwiches and other things that we need, please see Lisa before you leave tonight. Please be here to support our Bible Bowlers on the 29th, starting at 9 a.m. in the morning. Brother Spain is having surgery tomorrow, outpatient, but he's asking for our prayers. And so if you could please remember him. Also, tomorrow, my mother is having a birthday. And Oliver is having a birthday. So, and what? $355. $375. All right. That's what we need for the Chick-fil-A sandwiches. Thank you. We're real close. We just need a little more. All right. Thank you. Oliver, where are you? He's having a birthday tomorrow too, Mama. So you want me to announce his and not yours? Okay. We have a good crowd tonight. It's encouraging to see you, and I trust you had a good Bible study period. You come to a service like this in the middle of the week, it's good to spend time with an open Bible and open hearts and good fellowship and good times when we can encourage one another and motivate one another to live closer to the Lord and do the right thing. We're offering an invitation tonight. We've been doing that as long as I've been preaching here. Long before I started preaching here, it was a practice. It is in most churches that I've ever attended. I think it's a wonderful practice. I think it's a good idea. This is a good time when our hearts are fresh with the Word of God and good fellowship and encouragement from our brothers and sisters. If we have any needs, be it gospel obedience or simply asking for prayers from the church, this is the time to make that need known. If we can assist you in any way, please let us know while together we stand as we sing.
Hark, the gentle voice of Jesus falleth tenderly upon your ear. Sweet his cry of love and pity Number 715, 715. Just the first verse, we'll be led in our closing prayer. Please remember, if you're participating in the Bible Bowl or a parent of a young individual participating in the Bible Bowl, if you'll meet with me down front for 5 minutes. I'm hungry, so it'll be short. 715. This world is not my home, I'm just a passing through. My treasure